a discussion about F. Scott Fitzgerald and his short story, The Ice Palace.
Yeah. Actually, this story is not short. It's quite complicated.
Yeah, for a short story, it's actually a long short story.
Yeah,
you're right.
So why don't you start from the beginning, because the first paragraph is quite interesting.
Yes, it starts just describing the scene, but as you say, it's interesting because he uses the words, the sunlight dripped over the house like golden paint over an art jar. So already he starts with a metaphor for the house. And the freckling shadows here and there only intensified the rigour of the bath of light. So not just describing the house, but he's personifying the house.
Yeah, I agree.
Because freckles are usually on somebody's face.
Yeah, right.
And he mentions the freckling shadows here. I think... Okay, and he talks about great stodgy trees.
Yeah.
Usually trees, stodgy is thought of as a kind of food, is stodgy if it's very thick and heavy.
Yeah, right.
Let's see, day long. And then he talks about all day long face the dusty road street with a tolerant, kindly patience.
Yeah. It's really personified.
Yeah. It's basically thinking of all these, the actual house and the street as like people.
Really.
And giving them personalities.
Yeah. There are some interesting passages and related to personalities, especially the Southerners and the Northerners.
Right.
Okay, so why don't we move on to the last one we are interested in?
But in the first section of the story, again, Fitzgerald uses a similar style. Where are we? Oh yes, when he says the Ford, having been excited into a sort of restless, resentful life. So here the Ford is basically the Ford car, an early model, probably the beginning of the century, the 20th century, early 1900s, into a sort of restless, resentful life. So the car has its own personality again.
Right.
Which he goes on describing the whole, again, then when this is Clark driving to meet Sally, but just as important is the description of the whole town. He mentions it's shopping time. The population of the town idled casually. But it's not just the people. They were being urged on by a placid streetcar. So the vehicles are just as important as the people.
Yeah, right.
Even the shops seemed only yawning their doors. So again, this personification of the buildings. The shops were yawning because they were bored. Like the doors were open like a yawning mouth. Blinking their windows in the sunshine before retiring into a state of utter and finite coma. So it's as if the shops and the streets, the doors and the windows had the same personality as the people.
Yeah.
And they are going into this state of a coma which you're in when you're probably in hospital or
right.
you've passed out.
Yeah. It seems people and the landscape are the same.
Yeah.
They are languid. They're sleepy.
Exactly. Yes. It's
especially in the heat and in that kind of weather.
Probably like Taiwan in the summer. Well, the Taiwanese people are very busy, but these people are, as you say, languid and not so energetic.
So after Harry Bellamy comes to the south, then let's talk about their Sally Carroll and Harry Bellamy's conversation.
Right. Well, obviously, Sally has all her friends like Clark who came to see her, date her, but she's, engaged to this guy, Harry Bellamy, and a lot of the town can't believe it, and it's mentioned several times. It's saying that you can't be happy. He's a northerner. How can you possibly, marry this northern guy? And I think the whole they mention this several times. I mean, Tarleton is the town that Scott Fitzgerald invents. It's actually based on a real town with real people. I forget the name, but it's actually a southern town. But he was. It's a town that his Scott Fitzgerald own future parents-in-law were going to live in. Lived in the south, and he didn't want to cause any embarrassment, so he changed the name. But anyway, yes, as you say, Harry, this northern guy, comes down to meet her for a few days. And it says his intention was to settle a matter that had been hanging fire since he and Sally Carroll had met in North Carolina in the midsummer. So basically, settle a matter is to make sure, that she still wants to come north, and they're really are engaged. The settlement took only a quiet afternoons and evening in front of a glowing open fire. So simply to make sure she loved him. And they're going to get married. Yes. The date is scheduled. Yes. So it's not just rumor in the town, which Sally Carroll was trying to say it was just a rumor, but actually it's reality.
But in the conversation in the cemetery, we can see Sarah Carroll's personality.
Yes. Because she's worried that, not this difference between north and south, and also the impressions people make on each other. And so she in a way, she's opening up to Harry, showing him that one of her favourite places is a cemetery, which most people may be scared to visit or feel bad about. But it holds more than just a nice place to meet. Because this passage in section 2, she says she's discussing the cemetery with Harry and mentions the Confederate dead. As she points to a stretch on the other side of the hill where 1,000 greyish white crosses are stretching in endless ordered rows like stacked arms of a battalion. And this is important because this is not, Scott Fitzgerald was born and was writing, in the early part, late part of the 19th century, early part of the 20th, but he, the Civil War was not long over, and this is still a big thing between the North and the South. And Sally here also mentions, even though a lot of the dead, and they're probably older than her, but she talks to people. They're still very much part of their culture.
Right.
And she says to Harry, it's not me, because Harry thinks it's just her beautiful words and her love of this place. She said, no, it's not me, it's them. That old time that I've tried to have live in me.
Yeah.
So she wants this old time of the great southern states to be alive in her. She hasn't forgotten, and people haven't forgotten. These were just men, unimportant, evidently, or they wouldn't have been unknown. But they died for the most beautiful thing in the world.
Yeah.
And this is the crux of Sally Carroll's life.
Yeah, right.
The dead South. So it's the South, and it's what they call the dead South, because the southern states were where most of the white people were very rich, because they had big farms, they had big slave holdings, so they had free labor. And even today in America they still have the big mansions that people lived in. These beautiful big mansions of the southern so-called, they didn't have aristocracy like in England, but they liked to think of themselves in that way.
Yeah, because they are ranked. No.
Yes.
Yeah, and
ranked
they
more by wealth.
Yeah.
Yes. And these people had wealth and power. I mean, look, even today they do. The Bushes are from Texas. All the Bushes still have the power. There's still a lot of power in the South. And so she's remembering these like noble days when the South hadn't been defeated by the North.
Okay. So speaking of the North, then Sarah Carroll goes to the North, right?
Well, yes. Even though she loves the South, she realizes that things don't change in the South. People still living this easygoing kind of languid, as you say, life.
And Sally is very young, just 19 years old.
Yes.
She must want to see different things.
Exactly. I think she wants to see the world and wants to see change. So she gets on the train. They call it the Pullman. It's like one of the kind of trains. All night. And it was very cold. She needed more blankets and bedclothes. And when she woke up at 6, it was very uncomfortable. And she managed to stumble to the diner for a cup of coffee. The snow had filtered into the vestibules and covered the door with a slippery coating, so the snow was covering everything. She'd never seen snow before.
No. It seems a kind of foreshadowing. She's uncomfortable around the icy place.
In a way, yes, this is kind of, as you say, you're right, foreshadowing the future. She's just beginning to feel this first time probably in her life she felt serious cold. And then again they use houses to kind of express the feeling. Sometimes a solitary farmhouse would fly by, obviously on the train. You've seen these things going by, ugly and bleak. It's a very strange, lonely, terrible feeling.
Yeah, right.
On the white waste. So here it's not beautiful white covering. It's a white waste. Like a wasteland.
Nothing left.
Yes. And each one, and with each one she had an instant of chill compassion for the souls shut in there, waiting for spring. So she could feel they were imprisoned in these houses, covered and surrounded by snow. I mean, if people today probably can't imagine this. They had no TV,
No.
They had no internet.
No.
And they were just in their houses, nothing.
Yeah.
What could they do? Surrounded by thick snow, you couldn't even go out in for maybe 2 or 3 months.
Cold.
Yes.
Okay.
So as you say, it's like it's almost like foreshadowing what's coming next.
Especially the end of the story.
Yes.
Okay, so no, the only place they can feel a little bit relaxing is in the library. So
yes.
Why don't you talk about?
Well, this is just after she's met the family at the train station, and some of more Scott Fitzgerald's beautiful descriptions of like a woman looking like an egg. Yes, then she finds herself in the library, and even though everything's new to her, but she discovers that it really is not just new to her, it's new to the people living here. There's only been, as Harry later describes to her, there's only 2 generations or 3 generations. They can only remember their grandparents. This is a new town.
Yeah.
Before their grandparents, there was no town. It's just, this is America, that everything is new. Before, the white people came, it was the land of the native Indians.
A lot of wasteland.
Well, a lot of their own, what the Indians would see as their Mother Earth, but to white people, the settlers, was a wasteland.
Yeah.
But, as you mentioned, the library, this just simply by looking description of the books, it has much more symbolism, because the books in covers of light gold and dark gold and shiny red, so they're all very beautiful and shiny, but then she looks at them again and it looks as if they had been read some. So they're just like these beautiful shiny books that are there, but maybe some of them have been read, maybe they've only been read a little. And then she remembers back, obviously she thinks of her own beautiful battered old library at home, with her father's huge medical books and old paintings of her great uncles, and even the couch that has been mended over and over, like this old but 45-year-old couch, but it's the place of luxury, her home, where she could dream. This new place, like the new people and this new town, is neither attractive nor otherwise, and everything is expensive.
Yeah.
And it looks about 15 years old. It's kind of in English we use a French word, the nouveau riche, the new rich. And it's like a kind of comment that they have really, not only are they recently rich, but they have no culture.
No.
They just have these books, but does anyone ever read them?
Yeah. So the library here is a very important symbol.
Yes.
Okay.
Comparing the 2 northern...
Okay. So the library is a very important symbol in the story, right?
Yes. Basically, I mean, it's, as you read the story, it's just, you could read it just as a description. She's just met her new, Harry's family that she's planning to marry into, and everything is, the snow is the first time she's ever seen snow, the first real cold, the first time she's met Sally's parents. Now she's got a brief moment that she can sit in the library. But it's also a very important moment because she's just thinking of, it's like a symbol for north and south.
Right.
And in her mind she's comparing, everything in the library with her own library at home. And this library, as she says, over the fireplace has rows upon rows of books. in covers of light gold and dark gold and shiny red. So they're all very beautiful and shiny and gold, speaking of, wealth and money.
Yeah.
All the chairs had little lace squares where one's head should rest. So everything's neat and tidy and, very nicely laid out. The couch was just comfortable. So not really comfortable, but just about. The books looked as if they had been read, some. So they're all there in this beautiful, shiny, light and dark gold. But maybe they'd been read just a little, if at all. And when she was looking at this, she immediately had a vision of the battered old library at home.
Yeah.
With her father's huge medical books and the oil paintings and the old couch that had been mended up for 45 years and was still luxurious to dream in. So here it's like the books back home were, obviously well worn and people loved reading. And even the couch was old and mended, but somewhere she could, feel secure and actually could dream in, which is important for her as a southern girl.
Yeah, yeah.
And here, in this new place, everything was fairly expensive and all looked about 15 years old. And in a way, this is a symbol of this new northern, brash kind of nouveau riche, as the French would say, the new rich who had nothing but money and they were trying to buy their culture.
Yeah.
And this is why that it's not stated distinctly in the story, but another reason why Harry would want to marry a southern belle, because the South has a long history for hundreds of years at this time.
Right. Yeah.
And they had these rich family mansions, and in a way the Northerners were these nouveau riche with no culture, no history.
No.
The only thing better for Harry than marrying a Southern belle would maybe to be marry an English or European princess, but he wouldn't be able to find that very easily. So a Southern belle would be like a great thing for him and his family.
Okay, so it's a combination of wealth and the culture.
Yes.
Right. Okay. But Sarah Carroll doesn't feel very comfortable in the north.
No.
Yeah, because of the cold. But it seems there is a very comfortable conversation.
Yes, I mean
between Roger Patton.
Yeah.
There's a person who Harry doesn't introduce to Sarah Carroll.
Yeah,
that's strange. Yeah.
Yes, this is, I think, strange, but probably. I mean, Scott Fitzgerald, when he writes 10, 15 drafts of all his stories. He won't just print. He has thought this out very carefully. This is not just a simple short story. And as you mentioned, that if you're just reading the story, it reads quite very well, but actually, yes, Harry did not introduce this person. He was sitting near her, and he was a professor of literature.
Yeah.
So it's obviously something from the library indicated that Sally was interested in reading and literature. And he has a lot of interesting views on life and the northern personality and attitudes.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, speaking of the attitudes of the North and the South, why don't we talk about, Sari's feelings about, the Northerners treats the engaged women.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think
this passage is very interesting,
Yes.
especially
there's a lot of conversation, which is actually very witty conversation. But also this is, as you say, there's this short passage that says a lot. And it says, in the South, an engaged girl, they're talking about like Sally Carroll is, even a young married woman, which she isn't yet, she's just engaged, expected the same amount of half affectionate badinage and flattery that would be accorded a debutante. So really what she's saying is that she's expecting, even though she's engaged to Harry, everyone knows that. She's not hiding anything.
No.
But in the South, men would still treat her as a beauty, a young beauty, and flatter her, say sweet words, maybe mention her dress, her appearance, her figure, and wouldn't be embarrassed about it. It would be natural. It didn't matter that she's engaged or even married.
Yeah.
They would still treat women and try and, flatter the women and show the women that they are beautiful.
It's quite a European,
Probably
Can we say that?
European, more a European way and maybe Southern European way.
Yeah.
Yes, because this is another thing where later, where do the people, from the North and the South come from? Although obviously the southern states of America maybe have mixed with some Spanish, a lot of French blood, and later there will be Italians maybe later, but a lot of mixture and of the southern French and maybe other nationalities, even also, they were probably, even though they were slave owners, the slaves often worked in the house, and they were much closer with black people in a paradoxical way than the Northerners were, because the Northerners were trying to abolish the slavery, but didn't mix with black people maybe as much as the Southerners did. So in a strange way, all these personalities were, all these mixed, it's like a kind of hot pot of Southern personalities were mixed and very different that he mentions to the Northern personality.
Okay, so why don't we move on to, Sarah Carroll's, separate people from canine and feline.
Yes.
Okay, what do you think of this?
Well, yeah, it's it's an interesting, view of people. Very simply, it's not, you're a man or woman or you're good or bad. Her description is canine or feline, like canine being like a dog or feline like a cat. Now, how do you interpret this? And this is what Roger Patton kind of guesses what she means. As he said, what does canine imply? A certain conscious masculinity as opposed to subtlety. And Sally Carroll hadn't put it into words, but this is exactly what she's thinking. And Roger Patton put it very beautifully into more poetic phrases.
Yeah.
And then he mentions
Ibsen.
Oh yes, he goes on. Ibsen, one of the great Swedish playwright.
Yeah.
And his theory is not just feline and canine, but he thinks that the northern people are Ibsenesque, like Ibsen.
Yeah.
And to him this means they are gradually getting gloomy and melancholy. And Sally Carroll hasn't read Ibsen, but she gets the feeling Roger Patton explains. And he says there you get a brooding rigidity, this kind of very blue, very strict, serious, everything is run by rules. They are righteous, narrow, and cheerless. Now this is maybe not just the Swedes, but even a lot of the people in the northern states of America, a lot of them would have come from northern Scotland or England, or maybe a lot of them Dutch. Scandinavian. And there was a lot of Puritans who had very strict, this puritanical way of looking at life. And you could not dance or sing or have fun. And I think this is another influence in the north of the northern states. And this is obviously, as Sally Carroll realizes this more and more, she has trouble overcoming the difference.
Yeah. So, when it comes to her adventure in the Ice Palace, then actually we can see the result. Right.
Exactly. Yeah. What happens in the Ice Palace?
she almost dies there, right?
Yes.
Okay.
By getting lost in this maze of tunnels. And I think they say she's stuck for 2 hours.
Yeah, almost.
I mean,
almost 2 hours.
In that kind of weather, you could be outside for less than half an hour and die. So for her to survive for 2 hours is actually... It's a long time. I used to live in these similar cold climate in Canada.
Oh, really?
And classmates, one of my classmates and a lot of schoolmates would die just going to school.
Really?
They would get lost in the snow. And people couldn't find the bodies. They sunk beneath the snow.
Yeah.
Dogs can't smell under the snow. And here she's very lucky to have survived in this... Which again is this ice palace is a symbol, this beautiful palace of luxury, of wealth.
Yeah.
But it's made of ice,
really?
Freezing,
really, yeah,
deathly cold.
Yeah. So in the beginning when Sarah Carroll enters the ice palace, she thinks the ice is ghost.
Yes, exactly. It is like a ghost.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Makes you feel and cold, and you have these strange visions through the ice is semi-translucent.
So the same ice palace, is personified. Just like in the beginning we talked about Sarah Carroll's house.
Yes.
Right. Quite totally different. The atmosphere. The description is totally different.
Yes. I don't know if we can find...
So, why don't you talk about the symbol of the ice palace?
Well, as you mentioned, I mean, it's this huge building, and Harry described it as being 40, each wall being 40 inches thick. And it's actually, the description in the story is this great palace, or and almost, as you say, like a fortress with battlements and embrasures and narrow icicled windows, which is really, like a castle, but full of, electric lights and gorgeous transparency. So at first she thinks, wow, this is a beautiful, wonderful, shiny, great new place.
Yeah.
But then, you know, Harry plays a trick on her as they go down deep into the heart of the palace, and there are many caverns and many tunnels that you can get lost in, and she did get lost.
Yeah.
And now she's beginning to realize that she's been lost for a long time and may not even have long to live, because she's been crying out, no one can hear her. And she tried, even at the end, after she'd almost given up, she tried again. And she was wondering that maybe days later someone would find her frozen body.
Yeah.
And this is coming to her, and this whole, as you say, it's she's coming close to death, but is this marriage with Harry a form of death?
Yeah.
Or you know, imprisoned in 40-inch thick walls.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she looks around and she sees on both sides of her, along the walls, she could actually feel things creeping. But what creeps in ice? Nothing can live in ice.
Yeah.
But to her, they're damp souls that haunted this palace. But they don't just haunt the palace, they also haunt this town and this north. So to her, this is, you know, really, I think she, yes, desperate, and she's lost any illusion of being able to fall in love with the north, or maybe even this northern guy who's actually treating her very nicely.
Yeah.
He's not a bad guy.
No.
And then
she misses you know, her friends in the south.
Exactly. She suddenly thinks, what would Clark Darrow do, or Joe Ewing? They wouldn't have left her there.
Yeah, right.
They wouldn't have abandoned her. And then, you know, and she thought about her, you know, mortality. Would she be left to wander forever and maybe become one of these, you know, damp souls?
Yeah.
A ghost in
wandering in the ice palace.
Exactly. You know, frozen heart and body and soul. So even her soul would be frozen. That's a serious thing.
Yeah.
And she thinks, why? She is a happy thing. She is a happy little girl. She liked warmth and summer and Dixie. Dixie is a famous Southern song they sang in the Civil War. These things were foreign. Foreign. So it's not just, it's another part of her country. Remember, America started as 13 states, all different. They still have different laws even today.
Yeah, right.
But to her, it was the same as being in a foreign land. It was really, everything was foreign to her.
Yeah, okay. So, why don't you talk about Fitzgerald's use of symbols and his writing style?
Well, yeah, I mean,
or even his life.
Yes, I think obviously we've mentioned a few of the symbolic descriptions he has of personifying houses, streets, the actual very place people live. And there's the whole, I mean, every single thing. I mean, I haven't read everything of Fitzgerald's work, but every book I know, and some of the short stories, like this is a good example. Fitzgerald himself, you know, Francis Scott Fitzgerald was actually, you know, born in the north. Probably, you know, in this similar, it'd be very icy cold winters. And he himself fell in love with a southern belle, as they're called. Yeah. This girl Zelda. From the south, a beautiful southern girl. They call them southern belles. Yes, Zelda, in real life.
Mm-hmm.
But this is one of the weirdest things in the whole of Scots